Today's episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our friends at Compassion International. We've talked about Compassion, and we're so grateful for their partnership here on Sports Spectrum. They have been with us now for 4 years, and the work that they do is second to none. We're talking about releasing kids, young children, from poverty. No child should be stuck in poverty. It's just not what should be happening. And Compassion says, you know what, we're going to do something about it. We're going to stand in the gap with these children and help them and their families be released from poverty-stricken situations. And when you go to the website, compassion.com/sports spectrum, you'll see a list of children there waiting to be released from poverty. Just simply the words, choose me, kids from Indonesia, kids from all around the world, Mexico, Uganda, Nicaragua, Colombia, Ghana, just the Philippines, Bangladesh, all over the world. These kids did nothing to deserve the poverty-stricken situations that they're in. But here's the beautiful thing about Compassion. They give you and I an opportunity to stand in the gap and help these kids and release them from poverty. It's why myself and my wife and my daughter feel so strongly about Compassion and sponsor a child through their program. And we want to encourage you to do the same. It's $38 a month, tax deductible, and it connects a child living in poverty with a loving, church-driven child sponsorship program like Compassion International. Consider it today. Pray about it and think about where your money might go each and every day. In this situation, your money is going for medical checkups, nutritional food, educational assistance, mentoring, and most importantly, every sponsored child with Compassion will hear about Jesus Christ and be encouraged to develop a lifelong relationship with God. Check out compassion.com/sports spectrum and consider sponsoring a child today.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And welcome to the show, everyone. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. We are the intersection of sports and faith, and you can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. If you would like to get in touch with us here, maybe you have a guest idea, a show topic, or you just want to pass on some interesting comments about today's show with Luke Weaver, you can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com. Our website, free content available for you, devotionals, podcasts, articles, testimonials. It's sportspectrum.com. That's the place to go. That's the place to check out for all of our content. And again, it's free and right there at the website, sportspectrum.com. Today on the show, Luke Weaver joins us. Luke is a pitcher with the Arizona Diamondbacks, Major League Baseball pitcher. Pitched in college at Florida State. He was a Seminole there, and he was teammates with Jameis Winston. Yes, if you remember Jameis, the Heisman Trophy winner, the national champion in football, the quarterback, now with the Saints this year and had a tough injury. Jameis also played baseball at Florida State. I had remembered that, and as I was talking to Luke, I said to him, I think you and Jameis were teammates, weren't you? I hadn't even really thought about that, but then we started talking about what it was like to be the teammate of a Heisman Trophy quarterback in the sport of baseball. Luke was pretty good in his own right, and just like Jameis was a first-round selection, Luke was a first-round selection in baseball, of course, by the St. Louis Cardinals, 2014 MLB Draft, made his Major League debut 2 years later in August of 2016, named the Cardinals Minor League Pitcher of the Year back in 2016, and then, of course, like many professional athletes, Luke was then traded and had a new home with the Arizona Diamondbacks in December of 2018 in the Paul Goldschmidt deal from Arizona to St. Louis. Luke's really cool. I like him a lot. He's a great guy. He looks like he's 18. I'm sure he's been told that. His wife looks like she's 18, and they're both 28. But they're awesome. They're great people, and just really appreciate their love for God and their desire to serve Jesus in the work that they do, and I love this conversation. It's Luke Weaver from the Arizona Diamondbacks right here on Sports Spectrum. Luke Weaver, Arizona Diamondback pitcher. Welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Good. It's good to have you here. We've known each other a couple of years, but we've never actually had this conversation. So I'm glad we're doing it. Let's start with this. What does your off season normally look like in preparing for, I guess, what starts as spring training and into the regular season? Do you have a sort of a rhythm that you've developed now that you've been in the league for a few years that maybe you weren't quite sure about when you were first, becoming a professional?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's obviously ever changing, with life, and having a 2+ year old. That's been a little different the last couple of years. Before that, as a younger player, a little bit more over preparation, a little bit more stress involved in trying to make a team and do those things. And now I'm at a point where, there's some patience involved. There's some things that allow me to breathe a little easier, to work a little bit more strategically, and in that, just be more efficient in general. And I say that from a baseball perspective, but also just from, a spiritual and from a family oriented way. And just always continue to chip away at it and be a better person in that way.
I have to imagine, though, there's still a bit of, I don't want to say uneasiness or nerves that come into play, but you still have to earn your spot on the team. And there's still that sports aspect where nothing is promised. The NFL goes by not for long. I mean, you could adopt that into any professional sport. So there's still got to be some of that, I would imagine, too.
Absolutely. There's no complacency in any way. I think when we talk about, being a little bit playing in the league a little longer, no matter which league it is, we just learn how to handle those things a little bit better, and not complacent in knowing like, hey, I have a spot. It's, nothing's ever good enough. I don't think anything in life, besides accepting Jesus into your heart is about as good as it gets. But, I don't think there's ever anything that you're sitting there going, that seems good enough. That seems like enough, until you're 100-time All-Star and you've only played for 20 years. Like, I don't see how it gets better. But just pushing yourself and making sure you're better, and your family, having the people in your corner that are constantly supporting you, they know how to handle it better. They understand the process. And so that makes it easier for you. So everybody's kind of evolving as a team, and making sure you have those people in your life that help you along that journey is just kind of all about advancing you better.
Was baseball always a sport when you were younger, when you were growing up, or were you a multi-sport guy, Luke?
I was multi-sport, but it kind of, when it came to high school, it became, a hard focus on baseball. I really enjoy all sports. I love everything about competing and playing them, and getting to a point where, you lose some friends over some competitive juices that are flowing in the backyard. But,
yeah,
I definitely don't regret the path I've took in, focusing on baseball and giving everything I had to it, in that specific sport. But it would have been cool to kind of branch out and see what that would have looked like, and maybe even a high school level, and to look back. And there's some of those studs out there that have gone all the way up to college and done it. So I'm a little envy of them, but it's still cool to be able to still have golf in your life and some of these sports where you can knock around and see who's still good enough, who's the best.
When you were at Florida State, was Jameis there during the time you were there? So you were a teammate of his, right?
Yeah, 2 years before, pre-Heisman, post-Heisman, pre-national championship, post-national championship. And it was at 2013 we won. So that was to me, he's a good dude, and he was a good baseball player, obviously, a pretty great quarterback, and praying for him and his injury that he heals up. But
yeah,
that was something that was different. That was kind of the first look at what it looked like to maybe live in a major sport world, meaning at the highest level, what fans are doing, a security guard with them all the time, understanding at that age, like what that looks like, what maybe you're looking at in the future and hoping to get to, and just kind of, I guess if I look back, I'd be like, hey man, thank you for weathering that storm and allowing me to kind of be someone who watched from shore in a way, and just understood and learn from that experience, and that kind of maybe helped give me a perspective going into, what I'm blessed to be in now, and kind of almost a head start in what that looked like. It probably wouldn't be much, but, I think it would be a cool conversation to have. That did make some impact.
For sure. I mean, we've had him on this show a couple times, or at least one time, Jameis, and I didn't talk to him about his baseball career. I probably should have. We were talking about mostly football and his faith and things like that. But to me, you talked about being too sport guy or just being interested in other sports. When you're playing at that level, Division I baseball, Division I football, that's a different animal, right? And I have to imagine, there is a level of play that he had in football that's literally the best player in the country. And then in baseball, you're probably one of the guys. I don't think he was like the best player on the team. You could probably attest to that. But was it fascinating to watch an athlete who was that good in one sport come into another sport and sort of accept a role? Because I think when you're competitive, you always want to be the best or the guy. And suddenly I'm not saying just another guy, but in essence, you're one of all of these players that are on this team that are trying to, better themselves and perform.
Yeah. I mean, that's a quite a conversation right there, just because at that age, it seems like a lot, it seems like, he's 19, 20, like we're all around that same age. And that's a lot to put on your plate at that age. And I think, at the time you don't think much of it, right? You just think it's really cool, but you look back and you gotta learn to appreciate the magnitude of controlling all of those variables in his life. And like you said, taking a step back and understanding, like, hey, football's first. Like, I'm a good baseball player. Like he was a closer for us our last year together in 14. Was one of the better relief pitchers in the league, and he did a pretty good job. And he was probably he was like 2 to 4, I think, 92, 94. So he had a pretty good arm on him. We've seen on the football field, but in that, his leadership on the football field looked different on the baseball team. Like, they're just very different cultures, and it's very different styles of play. And I think there was some learning curve and understanding, like, a football mentality doesn't necessarily, perfectly mold into what the baseball, huddle looks like in the dugout in between innings. Like, I think there was some of that in there, and he did a good job adapting. But it was just cool. It was different. It was, we sold out a lot of opposing ballparks. We set a lot of attendance records just because of the limelight that was there. And it was just an experience. You look back and you think, man, that was a pretty cool time. And, it's a cool story to talk about.
What do you think is the equivalent of a quarterback in baseball? A catcher, maybe?
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, it's either pitcher or catcher. I mean, it's tough because, the catcher's controlling the game, right? Like, as far as everybody out, like, that's exactly what a quarterback's doing. But, at the end of the day, the pitcher's the one, initiating and starting and doing these things for the play to get going. So, I mean, it's a mix of the two. I mean, you just have to kind of take half and half and combine them, and now you have your quarterback. And man, what a stressful position. And getting into football more in the last couple of years, especially fantasy football, like, it just seems, they're doing more documentaries, the Hard Knocks, and it's just like, man, you think, pitching, catching, these things, there's a lot of information, but it's a whole other level as a quarterback. And then to get knocked around and, physically, I'm good. I'll be the kicker, the punter, or, hold or something, but that's about all I got.
Luke Weaver is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. You know this. We're the intersection of sports and faith. We bring Christ into the conversation. Let's bring Christ into this conversation together. When does that happen for you? Tell me about your journey with Christ, your journey with Jesus.
Yeah, just we'll keep it nice and smooth here. But growing up in the church, mom and dad were worked in the church, did a lot of missionary work, did some stuff overseas. Early memories of running around in some of those church gyms and stuff like that. And, it was fun. And then, you become your own man, your own person, and you start going and, high school FCA, those type of things, and involved in everything. I wasn't a a wild child. I was pretty reserved, baseball focused, sport focused, travel ball. All those things kept me away from um, staying out of trouble, I guess you should say.
Mm.
And that leads, but it's kind of like, hey, I know God, but I don't really have that relationship with him, right? It's all for, hey, the cute girls and the FCA, meeting, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we both believe, but it's like, well, I also believe that she's very good looking, and that could be a nice relationship. But that's besides the point. But getting to college, that's really kind of where it took off. I had a guy, James Ramsey, who was he was a senior there. He was a strong Christian believer. Mike Martin, same kind of guy. Obviously an older gentleman doing it for a while, and we had church every Sunday. Like, we had a chapel every Sunday. And I look back at that and I think it's so incredible that at that stage in our lives, especially in a college setting where it was a priority, it was a route. It wasn't like routine in a way where it's like, hey, we're having to do this again, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, hey, Sunday before our day game, we had the football chaplain come over. We had our breakfast in there, and he gave us a small sermon because we obviously can't go to church on Sundays, when we're playing. And I look back at that and I'm like, man, kind of the way the world's, evolving and doing its thing, like, that's a pretty cool thing in that type of culture. And, that kind of transitioned me into pro ball and meeting and getting stronger in my faith and meeting teammates and chaplains and the people that you're seeing every single day through the grind. And you grab on like a leech and you're just like, not sucking the blood out of you. I just really want to be close to you because this is hard and we're grinding and I want you in my life. And I just hope that you don't pull me off and, throw me back into the woods where I belong. But just through that, man, just growing and doing those things. And that led me into the St. Louis. And it was just like, I don't think it's fair to sit there and say, hey, it's the mecca of like Christian baseball players at the big league level or just in that organization, but they've been doing it for a long time. And they've I don't think that people at the top of the castle there in the front office are sitting there drafting Christians and doing those things like that by any means. But there's a lot of character and there's a lot of things that are involved in drafting people. And I think they've had to be strategic being at the back of the draft, being a winning organization a lot. But that leads me into the Adam Wainwrights and of the world and, the Matt Carpenter and Mike Schill and Ollie Marmol, now the manager, you just go down the list of people that have been influential. And Adam Wainwright takes the cake on that, and just being, a 22-year-old kid with a guy who's very, very old. But he's still doing it. He's still doing it. And I think we could all be like, hey, hat tip. But I learned a lot from him. And that was the first time where I transitioned to seeing what outside of this, the U.S. and what missionary work looked like, and then being involved with people in third world countries and just giving myself and opening up new lens and doing all these things, and just the transition period from people that have come along my journey, my timeline, have all led me into just, making it feel like there's no excuses anymore. There's nothing that should be holding me back. There's nothing that should be allow me to shy away from attacking things head on, and then now trying to pursue a leadership role and giving it back and taking people on that journey.
Yeah. Tell me about that time with Adam, coming, because you still had to go through the minor leagues and do your thing for a few years there. And Adam's not necessarily there except for maybe spring training. But when you get to the big leagues and you're 23 years old, and there's Adam Wainwright, and I'm not saying he takes you under your wing, but just knowing Adam and having been around him now for quite a few years, he's a guy that doesn't shy away from the fact that when somebody young comes up to him and wants to learn more, he wants to give that back and share that and encourage and kind of help the next level of players. What was that like for you, being around him and seeing the example that he was and in many cases still is?
Man, it was. I'd never tell him to his face, I'm kidding, but it meant the world. It meant a lot.
Right.
it was the way the team was structured. It was just a lot of veteran guys, a lot of middle tier veteran guys. And I'm kind of sitting there at the bottom of the totem pole, obviously beyond excited and blessed to be breaking into the big leagues. But, all my friends and all my close people are, still in AAA, AA, those things. And, they're eventually going to get there. They just haven't quite gotten to that journey yet. But like you said, he hit all those topics, man. He invited me to a dinner with some guys. He would make sure the conversation wasn't, steering in one direction or another, that I was involved. There was some golf in there, like just something. And he's, it's not 24/7 babysitter either. Like not spending every waking minute with this guy.
Right, of course.
But sometimes it was like, well, I don't have anybody. Like, why not? Like, let me come sleep over on your couch in your suite, man. But it was really cool. And so through that journey, it just became, a lot of questions I had, right, about the Bible, just about missionary work, about baseball, obviously in the dugout, and just being challenged to reading groups, getting into to chats with him and allowing him to lead those. And we've seen that happen from him on Twitter and his big congregation that he's been feeding into, which is, to this day, this just seems incredible. It's unbelievable. But
what is it, like 20,000 people that are reading the Bible and walking with Waino? It's pretty crazy.
The discipline and getting to do that every day, and having the Don Christensens of the world that are help leading him and that have fed into my life because of Adam. And it just goes down the list, and you sit there and you take it for granted. But then when you have these conversations like we're having, and you look back, you're like, man, there's a lot of stinking people in my life that have made impact, and that I'm like, I don't know where I'd be without them.
Yeah. It's funny to think too, when you go through your journey and different stages of that journey and the different people that were in during that time. For you were with the Cardinals, and then you get traded. Welcome to the world of being a professional athlete. Right? You're a first round pick to the Cardinals, and then 4 years later, you're being traded as part of the Goldschmidt deal to Arizona. What was that time like for you to find out you were traded? It happened in the off season, which is always a good thing, I guess, in December. So you have a couple months to kind of digest it. But still, it's got to be a little bit of a surprise, even though it's part of the deal of being a pro baseball player. Yeah,
I mean, it's not personal, right? But
exactly.
It was tough. It was tough because of all the things we've talked about. It was tough because it was comfortable. It was I was evolving. I was learning a lot of things. I was continuing to grow with the people that have made a lot of impact. And it's like, why would you want to leave? And then you sit there, and it happens so fast, right? I'm like half asleep on star fishing on the middle of my living room ground. Like, I get a call, and it's like, oh boy, why are you calling me? And, everything goes down, but then you just learn real quick. You sit there, and of course my wife is like, all right, like my wife Olivia is like, this is good. This is a good opportunity. Like, let's, very positive. Right. And she's the one that's the processor, the one that, worries and making sure everything's good. And I'm like, hey, whatever, like, we'll figure it out. And I was shocked, right? I couldn't. And she's like, you okay? And I was like, I just need to process this. And so as I'm processing, people from the D-backs, teammates that I was with the Cardinals, I had to play with the D-backs, are now contacting me. Hey, let's talk. And it's like helping me walk through this journey of, hey, I've been through this. I know what that organization's like. Let me tell you about this guy. Let me tell you about what they do, and just kind of softening that blow a little bit. And then you start to realize, man, I said the word comfortable. It's like, okay, right when we're comfortable, it's time to start being uncomfortable again, right? It's time to see our next chapter, our next journey. And I'm like, okay, God, like, I feel you. I'm tracking with you. It did feel like it was coming to an end there, and like, this seems right. And so, I am moving further out to the West Coast, not really a West Coast guy, East Coast to the death, but let's give it a shot. And man, that's where I met the Nick Ahmeds and the Steven Souzas, and you go down the list, and you're just like, okay, not much has changed. All I've done is met new people. I've opened myself up, and now I have an opportunity to fall into a leadership role, to transition into one, and to plant a seed here. and doing that, it's just been a process. It's been a learning curve, and it's been, it hasn't been perfect, right? I've been hurt a couple times. It's our results as a team has been a little shaky, but nothing's ever perfect. It's always gonna, you read through any of the New Testament, you hear plenty of parables and stories. I'm going through the middle of Mark right now, and it's just like, wait for, always be prepared for my return, essentially. Don't be waiting around and slacking, and when I come, you better be prepared. Those type of things. It's like, I don't want to get complacent again, and I don't want to, get stuck into a routine of like, hey, we lost another game, or here's the performance, or am I not advancing the kingdom? I want to make sure that anything times stall out or get stagnant, I want to keep those motors running. I want to make sure they're WD-40'd and the maintenance is all good on them, because someone's going to be impacted, whether it's one life or many.
Yeah, that's such a great way to look at it too, because I feel like when I hear your story, it's almost like St. Louis was a time to kind of prepare you. And then, kind of like, for lack of a better term, like the younger believer who's being discipled and groomed. And it's like, okay, now go and preach the gospel, the Great Commission. Now go out. Here's your challenge. Here's your next stage. Did you kind of view that when Arizona was happening? It's like, okay, been in the league a couple of years. I'm being called to somewhere else, but here's a chance for me to spread my wings, I guess, for lack of a better word.
No, I like that. Probably not right off the get-go. That's probably part of my processing time I had. But as my thoughts got into order, probably not those words. I like those words better, but it was basically, the same concept of like, okay, I guess it's time to step and be a big boy now, right? Like, let's take the training wheels off. Let's ride that bike and let's go door to door and see if we can impact some people. And it was uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable going to new school and meeting new friends and doing all that. That's just part of it, right? You can't, it just pushes you to a way where you never underappreciate it. You always be thankful for the ways you were pushed, even though they stunk and they were thorny and they were, prickly, and it just didn't feel too good. And you end up seeing that, hey, a time with the Cardinals was built on some rock. It wasn't sand. It wasn't the seeds dropping and into the weeds and getting all thorny and prickly and all these things. Kind of the reference I'm going with there, but yeah, it's just it's a pretty thing. And you add some water, maybe a bad storm comes through, but all what you're seeing, you're just like, this is pretty rough. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, guess what? A beautiful rainbow just came right after it. And now I'm feeling real good because I'm going to go find the pot of gold. And that gold is, old Jesus. Yeah. We're getting all crazy right now. I'm gonna back off for a second there.
Luke, you're allowed to preach, man. Preach it.
I'm preaching with like Cheerio or Lucky Charms, and I'm going all crazy.
And right rainbows, now. Yeah, and the pot of
exactly.
Gold. Well, I would say this too, though. But when I think about your journey, and you're with the Diamondbacks, I wonder, because you're a guy who is in a position of achievement and results. Right. And you're going to pitch if you get guys out. And if you don't, or if you're not available, they're going to find somebody else to do that. Mm-hmm. How do you handle the bad times, the times when you're injured, the times when you don't have it, when you go out there on the mound? Does all of that sort of rock that you described, built on rock moments with the Cardinals and even in your journey growing up, has that helped you evolve in how you handle those bad times as a pitcher, knowing you're being evaluated, where it's completely the opposite with our faith? Once we ask Christ into our lives, it's not about anything we've done, but all about what he's done.
Yeah.
In baseball, it's all about what you do. So has it allowed you to kind of handle those difficult times and those difficult moments, differently as you've gotten older?
Definitely as I gotten older. I mean, man, I don't care who you are. It's just, if you're not putting up results, the weight of the world feels like it's crushing you. And how easily it could be taken away. You've already said, like, it's a next man up kind of thing. It's
right.
they'll always find somebody better, or not even better, just someone to fill you until someone produces that role. It's ever changing. You're just an interchangeable piece. And I think as you mature and you understand these things, and I think I'm finally now getting to a point where it's like, you don't get to control how people act, what they do, because they're all in control of your career, right? Like, they're the ones that are, making the decisions. But guess what? You get to control what you go do out on the field. And if you're pitching well, like, no one's ever going to try to break that down or change that. Like, they're going to let it ride.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that point? Well, you don't do that in worrying about the things that are out of your control. You worry about, what am I doing on a daily basis that gets me into my best version of myself as a person and as a player? And, as a player, those things just kind of come second nature. We know the drills, we know the things, we practice the bullpens, everything in between that leads up to a start. Like, that stuff's ingrained in you, and you just have to trust in your preparation. But the big thing is, what happens after the bad start? Am I going to go sulk in my locker? Am I going to avoid people? Am I going to change my attitude because it didn't go my way? It's like, I've had to sit there in my locker several times in the last however many years and just sit there and be like, how am I going to be defined in this moment when I walk out of my locker and go to the training room or go back to the dugout? Like, because everybody wants to avoid you, right? It's human nature. Like, give him space, give him his time. Is he angry? Is he not angry? What is it? And I just want to be the guy that when I went in to pitch that day, everybody looked at me the same way as if I pitched bad at the end of the game, but I'm walking around. Like, I want to be like, oh man, didn't go too well today, but there's some good things I did, and there's some bad things. Going to continue to build off the good and learn from the bad and get better at it. And it's just like, how's your day going, Jason? It's like, my day. I didn't just give up 6 in 4 innings. It's like,
Right,
okay. Look, Jason, I'm trying to move on. Like, why are you bringing it back up again? Now I'm going to get angry.
Yes.
But I just want to build the culture when I walk into a room, people aren't trying to avoid that. Right. They understand that there's a lot of difficulty in the game. There's ups and downs, and but that you can still talk to me. We can still have a conversation, and whatever that conversation looks like, it isn't hindered by my emotion. And I think there's been a lot of growth and a lot of understanding in that. And that's what I try to push myself to do after each start.
That's really good. As we wind down, I want to bring up, you and I had a conversation in person a couple months ago in Florida. I wish I was in Florida now, by the way. I'm in Connecticut. Hopefully I'll get back there again soon. But the conversation we had was a really fascinating one. And I thought this is a great place to kind of bring that into the conversation we're having here on the show, on the podcast. Yeah. And it's a unique story that you were telling me about regarding the baseball glove that you use. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So simply put, like, the way the game's going, and especially with baseball, but we see it with football, we see it with basketball, there's a lot of personality being shown through shoes, through things that are worn, outfits, this and that. Like, it gets a little it's fun, right? As a spectator, as a fan, to see what's the LeBron or what's the Steph Curry gonna roll up today in his crazy looking outfit or whatever it is. But yeah, baseball is kind of, it's shifting towards that, right? Because we're starting to understand, like, we just want to express ourselves in a way that's fun, that's entertaining, and just truly, like, just like we see in the Bible, like, we just want to give ourselves in a way where it's like, hey, I just want to be me. Like, I want to be the best version of myself. And I believe that it's through Jesus, but, like, maybe it's something else for somebody else, and hopefully they get to that point down the road. But what I'm trying to get to now is, and what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to show the world that Jesus is where the personality comes from, where it is rooted in. And in this glove, it's essentially a glove that is representing the Bible, and it's the same color. You look back at a nice, just pretty old school Bible, like a nice brown leather. It's got the spine. It's got some some old kind of drawings in it, some kind of indentions and whatnot. And so this glove is just a way to reflect that. The outside is brown. The spine, like where the finger comes up on the outside of the glove, it's got some of those indentions. It says Holy Bible on it. Inside of the web of the glove and the fingers, there's 3 fingers that are indented with verses. There are 3 verses, life verses. Matthew 19:26, with God all things are possible. Those type of verses that, in the midst of the battle, right, where I'm wearing this glove, I can look down and be reminded of, like, all right, he calms the storm. I'm the one freaking out on the boat saying, help me, help me, help me. And he's just like, dude, chill. I'm trying to take a nap. I'm trying to take a nap. I'm trying to get my Z's right now. And you're done. I done took a NyQuil, and you're disturbing me. But it's just a way where I want to be able to show the world that in the midst of that battle and competition, that and the personality and the expression, that, like, this is what I choose to do, and that in doing this, I hope more kids can wear a glove like I'm wearing, and to go out and to wear it in their travel ball and their little leagues and their high schools and their colleges, and to one day just be like, hey, like, I'm using a glove that helps me play this game, but I'm also expressing who I am, and I love every second of it. And this is how, and if someone wants to ask about it, guess what? Now we get to talk about it. Mm-hmm. What's this? Why is that? Why'd you choose that? Like, all right, let's have that conversation, because a lot of times the hardest part in these conversations is initiating it. And you don't know how to start it. You don't know what to say. You don't want to offend. You don't want to do any of these things. But why not a baseball glove that allows you to start speaking about Jesus?
Well, it's not just the fans too, because you might sign autographs and you might put a Bible verse on it, but not everybody gets your autograph. But if you're, and the fans, obviously, if they're watching you pitch, might see the glove when you hold it up or whatever, as you're getting ready to throw your pitch, and boom, there's something on that. What is that? But I'm thinking conversations with your teammates too, right? Yeah. Like, what a great way, or even opposing players, and just
it's happened too.
Oh, it has happened, right?
It has happened. Yeah. Because this glove will officially launch, whenever the season or spring training or whatever we figure out with this, with the baseball season. But I debuted the last 5 games of the year right after I came off the injured list. It was like, hey, let's go give this a little sneak peek almost, right? And
soft launch.
Soft launch, whatever the technical terms of the marketing world is. And I'm like, all right, I'll use the glove. I'm just trying to get people out. Like, that's not my professional expertise. But I had those conversations where guys, you'd be amazed how, if something new walks into the clubhouse, whether it's shoes, bats, gloves, batting gloves, anything that we use on a regular basis, the attention is drawn to it. I know what it is for me. I'm very observant, and I see everything. And when something's new, it's like, what's that? Tell me about it. Why do you have it? What is it? And I had those conversations, and there was a lot of great positive impact in that. And people, that conversation starts stirring, right? And it's like, whether something comes out of it or not, that's what you said. That's the goal, right? It starts with them, and then we start branching, and we start getting it out there. And that's all we can do. We don't want to over push people. We don't want to, penetrate too hard. We just want to make sure that first wall is just a little soft, and then if they want to break through it, they will. But we'll be waiting on the other side, ready to come have that conversation.
Is there a website brand that people can check it out? Is that out right now?
Yeah. So it's called Aria, ARIA. And it's on my Instagram. I've posted a couple of pictures about it.
Perfect.
I'm not the greatest social media guy. I try to give however many followers I have the best I can. My wife helps me out on that, but there's some cool pictures of it there. And then the website, you can check it out. They do cool stuff, ice cream, gloves, tacos, all that stuff. But this one's my baby. This one's something where I'm like, this is me. This is what I want to do. I help design it, and I just, every year I want to be able to have the same concept with a new design, and then just to continue to get them pushed out there. And in doing this, a lot of that money that's made is going to go back into charities and to make impact into communities. And that's the whole goal, Yeah,
it's a win-win-win. Hopefully it helps you pitch better. Hopefully it gets more, people asking about Jesus, and hopefully goes and helps and supports other charities as well. I'll link to the Instagram, to your Instagram, and to the website in the show notes so people can find it there. Luke, thanks for being here, buddy. Thanks for the conversation, and thanks for all you do, and just appreciate you. And hopefully we'll see you down the road soon.
Jason, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me. The Sports Spectrum's just about as good as it gets, and we're thankful for it. So thank you.
Thanks, buddy. And super thankful again to Luke Weaver from the Diamondbacks for being here today on Sports Spectrum. I will link to his Instagram in the show notes, as well as that website for Aria gloves that he was talking about, the baseball glove. What a great idea to be a witness for Christ by putting some Bible verses and creating a glove that's kind of made out of the same material as a leather-bound Bible would be. That's a really cool idea, I think, to openly express your faith, but not force it into anybody's faces, and then be ready to have those conversations like Luke said. Pretty cool idea. And, if I had a kid, or even myself, if I was playing baseball and I needed to get a new glove, Aria gloves would be the place I'd turn to first. So if you have a kid who's playing baseball and you want a glove like this with maybe some scripture on it, check it out with Aria gloves. And I'll link again to the website and to Luke Weaver's Instagram so you can check it out. Thanks again to Luke Weaver for being here today on the show. We thank you as well for listening. We always do appreciate you. Before we go, make sure you click that subscribe or follow button on whatever app you're listening to this show on so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. There's tons of archival content. If you want to hear our conversation with Jameis Winston, you can do that. If you want to hear our conversation with Adam Wainwright, you can do that as well. Two people that were prominently mentioned in today's conversation with Luke Weaver. So click that follow, click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode, and then tune in next time right here on Sports Spectrum. My name is Jason. We love you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.